Hey everyone, it's me, Christine Job of Flourish in the Foreign, here on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. If you do not know what Flourish in the Foreign is, what are you doing? Flourish in the Foreign is a podcast that elevates and affirms the voices and stories of Black women living, thriving, and just basically doing the damn thing abroad, but it also explores living abroad as a pathway to wellness. And today I have a really special guest. I have Valerie Weyland, who was episode, I believe, 3 on the podcast when I launched last year. And we're going to just catch up. So let me first introduce Valerie to you all. Valerie Weyland is an explorer at heart, always open to what life may bring. She's a storyteller, nurturer, healer, creative, lover of the seen and unseen, ever present student, and ever evolving teacher. She's Nigerian American, born and raised in Inglewood, California, and has called Western Australia home for nearly 9 years. She is the founder of Brown Girl Bloom, a loving space for Black, Indigenous, women of color to heal and bloom with a focus on meditation and Reiki energy healing. Hello, Valerie. How have you been?
I'm wonderful and well done on reading that long bio. I kind of I got caught away with like describing myself though. But
It's
yeah,
lovely, though.
great.
It's so lovely and all encompassing.
Yeah, I'm doing really well. And like last time, I also just wanted to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm connecting with you on today, the Wajik people of the Noongar Nation, acknowledging their elders past, present, and emerging. But I also want to acknowledge our ancestors because without them and their love, we wouldn't be here and being able to explore and travel around the world. And I just send my gratitude for them continuously guiding and protecting us.
Yes, I receive it. Amen. Because I think that's something that I don't know. I don't know. I guess it depends. It depends on your heritage and maybe how you were raised. But some, I would say, Black Americans, don't come at me, everybody. Some are kind of disassociated and think like now I travel abroad and I'm like the only. And they don't necessarily go back into their history to see like their people have always been moving, maybe not abroad, sometimes abroad. I'm half Trinidadian. My grandparents moved to the States in the 70s, and then moved to New York and then moved to Texas. That's a whole different story, right? There's this intergenerational mobility, but also, like you said, there is protection from our ancestors for us to be able to move, sometimes in ways that they were not even able to. So I appreciate you bringing that into conversation because that
Yeah.
is so important to our discussion at hand.
Mm,
Definitely in elevating Black women's stories, which are so often not told.
right.
And that goes not only present day, but also in history, but also more like talking to or speaking to living abroad as a pathway to wellness,
Mm.
how people decide to move around to get well and how their intentions for their lineage still blesses us today. So thank you.
Oh
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. I feel everything you just summarized and said. And also when I speak on like ancestors, I won't go deep, but just a thought is that our ancestors are not just the ones that we're related to by blood. So like the people that we feel deeply connected to are also our source of like inspiration. They are our ancestors as well. So when I look into the horizon, I think about all of the people that have inspired me to get here. And it doesn't just stop at like my family or my great grandmother. It goes to, the mentors and the people who love me beyond that point in my life. They push me to thrive. Hmm.
I love that.
Yeah.
We could talk about this all day, but we're gonna talk about one. Let's get caught up because we chatted almost like a year ago, and Australia was handling COVID beautifully. Spain was not. Spain still is not. So I hope things are still good in Australia. Like, what has changed in this past year?
Yeah. Well, I guess I can. So Australia is such a big like continent. So
Yeah.
where I'm at, Western Australia, we've done really well. Since the start of the pandemic last year in March. Mark McGowan, who's the don't please don't throw shade at me because I don't know the right titles of like people's roles here, but he's like I don't know, like not the prime minister, but the one leading like Western Australia. And I'm so bad. I don't watch politics at all. But he just did a really good job of shutting down the borders in time. And so that meant that the exposure to COVID was like drastically reduced. Recently, we did have one like active case, and I think it was the UK strain. And as soon as they found it, they literally shut down the borders. Everyone had to go into quarantine. We were all mandated to wear masks, and everyone wears masks. And we have
Wait, you guys found one case?
Yeah.
I love it though. I love it. Oh my gosh.
But you know what? Sometimes you have to be really stern so that like sometimes we just got to go through the tough period for a short period of time so that we can go back to like some sense of normality. And I was really happy with it because that meant that we were only in lockdown for a week, and then they slowly like reduced the restrictions. We had to scan like a QR code for any building we went into. Of course, there was social distancing, and everyone here in Western Australia followed the rules.
Oh my gosh, what a concept. You follow the rules and everything goes well and everybody gets back to normal faster. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah. So now it's like back to like as if COVID doesn't even exist. So I definitely have a lot of admiration for everyone here in WA coming together so that we all can like be safe. It's kind of that concept of thinking beyond yourself that I think we need to embrace.
Definitely, definitely.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so last time we chatted, we talked in your episode about your work with the Aboriginal Noongar people. Did I get that right? No?
Nunga, nunga.
Noongar people. Tell me
Yeah.
how has that been for you this past year?
Mm.
What new things have you been doing?
In terms of like working with Noongar, like women and young girls, I was running a health and wellness program on behalf of an Aboriginal organization, and that was really fulfilling because everyone's a teacher. That's why I said I'm an ever-present student and an ever-evolving teacher. That means that we can all learn from literally every single person we interact with. And I found so much inspiration in my interactions with the Noongar women in particular, and Yemaji. There are different tribes here, but the predominant one is Noongar. And that was just really fulfilling. Being able to sit with someone with a completely different lived experience to my own helped me grow as a person. But that has actually come to an end. Literally, like a few weeks ago, I decided that I wanted to focus on Brown Girl Bloom a bit more and step back from other ways of serving so that I could just really hone in on what I'm really passionate about.
Okay. And I
Yeah.
remember seeing on Instagram last year, when the George Floyd atrocity happened, you and a bunch of other people in Western Australia kind of came together, led some protests, and were speaking in Black Lives Matter kind of protests. Can you speak to that? Like how did that come about? Why is that
Hmm.
necessary in Perth? And what has come of it?
Yeah, I think people here, so in Australia, when you say the word Black, it means more like in America, it means African American. But in Australia, it means those from the African diaspora, but also Aboriginal Indigenous people. Um, and so if anyone takes the time to look at the stats here in Western Australia in particular, Aboriginal people experience the same type of mistreatment that African Americans have faced for centuries. Aboriginal men are more likely to be incarcerated, even though they only make up like 3%, less than 3% of the population, but they make up about, I want to say 80 to 90% of the prison population. So there's a huge issue there, right? So when people saw this movement emerging in America, and we were all in lockdown, I think everyone felt deeply connected to this. They were like, okay, this isn't just like an American issue. This is an international issue. And I just want to add, like, when I say international, I really mean international issue, because even in Africa, they were protesting for their rights, in predominantly Black communities, because you have classism and all of those issues in those areas as well. And I got involved because I wanted to show the correlation between like the African American experience and the Aboriginal experience, and remind people that this is not people jumping on a trend in Australia. This is a real issue here as well. And so I decided to play my role in this movement by sharing my story and my experiences, not only in America, but also in Australia, because I have experienced racism here as well. Sometimes even more blatant when because I was living in kind of a country town, so it was very obvious that I was being mistreated because of the color of my skin. So yeah, it was just like, when you feel called to do something, you feel called to be part of the change that you want to see. So that's kind of where all that happened. So yeah.
And do you feel like Australia as a whole, or Western Australia, has come to a reckoning? Has there been strides for reconciliation, for repair, for anything?
That's a really good question, because I know, like, even before the Black Lives Matter movement, reconciliation has been a point of conversation for a very long time. But what I noticed to be like a bit of a turning point is that there were more people that were becoming, they were awakening to the reality of Black people. Because I think sometimes people are so busy, and we're all so busy a lot of the times, that we're stuck in this tunnel vision and we can't see that other people are experiencing pain around us, And I think like just the fact that we were all forced to be still because of lockdown meant that more people were like, they felt like a heart connection to this movement. And so that was the biggest shift that I saw. What that looks like has been really profound. I've seen organizations reach out to Black people to co-design and co-create and co-learn. I've seen organizations take more of a human-centered approach rather than like ticking numbers on a box. I mean, I've been reached out to create ideas for organizations to become more inclusive. So there's, change doesn't happen overnight. Change is like this slow process of building crumbs into a huge, castle. So yeah.
All right. Okay. So let's talk about your YouTube channel, because that's how I was first introduced to you. I stumbled upon your YouTube channel and I was like, this woman is gorgeous, but so profound. And I was like, I have to interview her for the podcast. So tell everyone who may not be familiar with your YouTube channel, what's it about? What kinds of things you discuss?
Well, the YouTube channel is Brown Bell Abroad. And the reason why I wanted to create a YouTube channel was more so to expand the narrative of Black women. And I also wanted to be I want it to be a source of inspiration for people to explore beyond their now, or the circumstances of their now. So it's really like a visual journal. I'm very open about and transparent about my challenges, like very open. I talk about my deep connection to spirituality. Yeah, it's just a journey. And I also think that storytelling is something that's natural to us as Black people. That's where oral storytelling is where we started. We would sit with one another and we would talk about like these dreams and share. And I'm just continuing that, but using YouTube as a space to do it.
And it's so beautiful. Oh
Thank
my
you.
goodness, the way you shoot it, the editing. It's so nice. It's so,
Thank
so
you.
nice. Okay. Now I would love to, well, first let me reset and let everyone know what's going on if they stumbled in. Hey everyone, I'm with Valerie Weyland. She was on episode 4 of Flourish in the Foreign, or episode 3 of episode 3 of Flourish in the Foreign, and she is a phenomenal, phenomenal woman living in Perth, Western Australia. We are talking about life in Western Australia. We're catching up. And now we're going to be talking about her entrepreneurship endeavors. If you guys have not listened to Valerie's episode on the podcast, you need to go ahead and do that. www.flourishintheforeign.com/episode/Valerie, because her journey to entrepreneurship, I mean, your whole journey just to go abroad is fantastic. And you're like so like chill about it. You're like so low key about it. And I'm like, every time when we were recording, I was like, what? What? I just remember being like, this is fantastic. So let's talk about, we won't go all the way into your backstory because y'all need to really listen to the episode.
Yes.
But let's get into you being a serial entrepreneur. Let's first get into how you came about creating a unit. No. Ayune hair. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, well, Ayane actually is a Javanese word, and Java's in Indonesia, and it means exceptionally beautiful. And it's sort of a play on words because, you know, beauty in society's eyes is a physical thing, right? Like it's the airbrushed images and the eyelashes and the perfect look. But I really believe that beauty has layers. You know, beauty is about like your story and your journey. Beauty is about connection to one another and the beauty of that connection to one another. And I felt so disconnected to the hair extension industries because it was so surface level. And in my own, and I think we're all going, I can feel like this collective like movement of like we're all like waking up and really like standing in our magic. And it's like when you wake up, like, and businesses aren't connected to that, like that reawakening, it's kind of like, I need to find a new space. Like, where do I belong? And I had like Afro hair, and I thought I could potentially shift the narrative within the beauty industry. And so I created INA Hair, which celebrates the layers of beauty, but also celebrates sisterhood. It celebrates kindness and compassion. It brings all of that back to the table because, you know, with the society that we live in now, it's like kindness and compassion are usually like the last things corporations think about. You know, like we're so
on
like,
top. Like, oh yeah,
yeah, just a little bit. Oh yeah, maybe we should be like a little nice. Maybe give like 1% to somebody. But this is at the center of INA Hair is compassion and love. Can we be the love that we so desperately desire, and can we be loving to others that we'll never meet? And that's the whole purpose of INA Hair. And a lot of times, a lot of the women who reach out to me, they'll say that they're so happy to find a place that aligns with who they are. But also they'll say that they never even knew like the truth behind like the hair extension industry. So, but I always say this is about progression, not perfection, because I don't think there'll ever be a point where we don't have any room to grow and become better.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Anyone who's watching, you can definitely drop a comment. I'll see it in this like spaceship command center that I have on my screen. That I'm like, there's a lot of things happening. Drop a question for Valerie or comment, anything like that. But let's get into it, Valerie. What are some of the things people don't know about the conventional hair extension industry?
Yeah, I think some of the things that people don't, well, a lot of times we don't ask, right? We kind of just accept things as normal. This is the normality of life. I get it. I order something online or whatever, and it gets to my front doorstep, and that's fine. And I think that when people start asking, where is this coming from and how is it arriving here, then people are probably disturbed by the reality of it. So hair extensions are usually collected in Southeast Asia and Asia. And oftentimes, or most times, women are either forced to cut their hair, not by choice, by force. There's even been stories of women being like literally held by knife point. I know it sounds so crazy because it's just hair, right? But if you think about like the amount of profit that these people will gain by like just literally taking hair and then us paying like hundreds and hundreds of dollars for it, it's money in their eyes, just as the same as like gold. Like who defined what gold was worth? People. You know what I mean? Like we were the ones that decided that. Another thing is that if women are given an option to like cut their hair, it's usually in the transaction is usually food and water, which isn't sustainable. And again, women are being mistreated unfairly because why are they only getting food and water when this person is making an actual profit off of it? And so I wanted to bring choice back to the table in a more empowering conversation. It's not about like a get rich scheme because like Eye in a Hair is not about like getting rich. You know what I mean? Like Eye in a Hair is about creating change. So we support women in collecting their fallen hair strands, and we go from there.
Okay, so tell me this because I'm so fascinated and I love talking about entrepreneurship. I love talking about Black women creating these businesses. But I feel like sometimes people think like creating a business abroad is so out of reach or only can look like one thing. And I'm not sure why there's that narrative, but I'm hoping more stories like these will help people go out there and do what they want to do.
Right.
Um, but tell me about like the research and development. Tell me about sourcing. Tell me where did you register your business? Like tell me those kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, when you have an idea, which I'm sure like if anyone's watching and they're thinking about something, starting a business, it starts with literally just reflecting on what it is you want to create. And for me, it started with like, well, who am I? Like, I can't create something that I don't feel connected to. So who am I? Um, and once I realized that I wanted to sell, well, it just started with like hair extensions, but hair extensions that at least represented who I am, you know. Um, but when I moved to Indonesia, um, it was through the interactions with locals before I even really thought about like, okay, this is a viable business. It was learning about the experience of the locals, and really connecting with them. And that's when I realized that, wow, I'm so much more connected to them than I ever thought. And so I realized, well, I can't just like just try to sell hair extensions. I think this has to be something that's even more meaningful and acknowledges our interconnection. And then you start with like, all right, looking on the web, right? You start looking and exploring like, okay, who aligns with who I am. I ended up connecting with some really amazing people and spending a profound amount of time. I had a whole year before I even launched anything, spending time in villages, remote villages where like your toilet is a hole in the ground, you know, like remote villages, because I wanted to be sure that I understood the process. I wanted to sell something that I would want to consume. And I wanted to ensure that like people were being treated fairly. And I wanted to build relationships with people. So that's where it started. And there were months of just spending time and sitting with the locals and the vendors and the women and really understanding like why they do this and what it means to them. Then I moved back to Australia because I was living in Bali for a year. I moved back to Australia. You have to obviously sign like a wholesale agreement and a contract for all of the vendors you have. In Australia, it's pretty easy to register your business. You literally just need like an ABN, which is an Australian business registration number. Hold on, Australian business number. I'm like, wait, I added something in there. And you're good to go. There are different types of businesses. So you can be a sole trader, you can be there's a partnership and then there's like a corporation. It's a bit different in America because you have limited liability, which is a lot better than the ones we have, but hopefully one day that will be an option. And then everything else is pretty straightforward. You create your own business account and you start marketing. Because the whole point is like building a brand. That's where most of your energy should be.
So how do you handle like packaging? How do you
Oh yeah.
handle logistics and like sending the product? Are you packaging it? Do you have is the wholesaler like drop shipping it for you? How does it work?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I could do drop shipping, but I like for women, or I call them soul sisters. Like eye and hair women are my soul sisters. And I want their experience to be meaningful. So although I think that drop shipping will eventually be in our future, right now I love writing like little love letters to each soul sister who purchases hair extensions, and I love building relationships with them. And so everything that I've done, from the packaging to like the product inside, all is stems from me. Like even the photography, I shot those pictures of all of the Indonesian women, including this one here, myself, and edit it. So I'm very, very hands on, which is time consuming, but it's really meaningful for me. Yeah.
That is incredible. Oh my gosh. So where do you ship? Do you just ship in Australia? Do you ship anywhere else?
Yeah. So actually, interestingly enough, most of our soul sisters are from America. Yeah.
Wow.
Most predominantly. We definitely have some Australian soul sisters, but almost, I would say, like 90% are American. So I spend a lot of time shipping products overseas, which I'm more than happy to do. And I always try to make the experience like really enjoyable. Hopefully, there will be more Australian like soul sisters that are connected to the message of ethical hair extensions. But these things take time. A lot of the women will reach out to me and really, because the hair is it's definitely more like premium hair extensions. So it's not about like you buying like $100 worth of bundles and then you throw it away in 3 months. Like this hair lasts years, so you're gonna
Mm.
pay for something that lasts years. But a lot of the women are like, I love your hair. I can't wait to like just save up and buy it. And I'm like, thank you so much for that. But what's even more important is how can you create change now in your life? Like it's not always about money, like how can you become more mindful of other people? So I'm all about
I
that holistic
love
approach.
that. I
Yeah.
love that. That's like, yes, yes. Which I think beautifully segues into your next venture or project, Brown Girl Bloom. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, Brown Girl Bloom started with my own healing journey. I mean, that's why I left America
Mhm.
9 years ago. I felt really depressed and lost. I didn't know who I was beyond the dreams of my parents. I think I shared that in the podcast before. And I love my parents, like, and they're like my source of inspiration. But I felt like this need to detach and find myself. And in the process of my own healing journey, I got to a point where I began to feel like this full cup of love and joy. And I wanted to share that with others. I think an important part of all of our journeys is like, how can we serve? Once we feel like we're experiencing abundance, how can we share that abundance with others? And
Mm.
that's where, Brown Girl Bloom uh, came from. And the essence of Brown Girl Bloom is that inner healing is our source to fulfillment, not the other way around. You cannot find fulfillment externally if you're wounded internally. And so it's a healing space just to create that.
I think what is amazing about your story, but also something that's heartbreaking is from listening to so many, specifically Black American women, because I've interviewed Black women from across the diaspora, but specifically Black American women who are always, obviously so bright, highly educated, doing all the things, and hearing their stories of burnout.
Hmm.
And some of these women, like myself, I didn't even know it was burnout. I just thought I was being a punk. Like I was like, "What's wrong with you? Why can't you? Why can't you get exam?" And like realizing by going abroad or starting to where you have space to start investigating, having space to really think deeply, to breathe, to really start understanding what nurturing is, understand like what I was experiencing was normal under
Mm,
those circumstances. It's normal to be burnt out and unhappy under these circumstances, especially
yeah.
if I'm pursuing things that are maybe not my dream, that there's dreams of
Mm,
others, right?
yeah.
Or or I'm in a situation that doesn't honor my true gifts, doesn't honor my values and how I like to serve.
Yes.
That has been super, it's been heartbreaking, but it's also been so inspiring because so many women have been able to make that leap and really embrace that wellness. And so that the fact that you're even creating a space for that healing,
Mm,
for obviously all brown girls, but like, and whatever they're
yeah.
going through, but I think it's so, so important. I mean, I think we've discussed this before. I just feel like wellness, I also speak specifically like in Black American community, is not spoken about in a
Mhm,
way that I feel that needs to be.
yeah.
And crystals and bath bombs are awesome. I always tell people that, but like you may need something more. Like you might need
Yeah.
something more for that healing. So I just say kudos to you for creating that space. And I think I just saw you opened up a space. You opened up a space specifically for the healing.
Yeah, it's my home. I created my house as like a healing house because I understood the need for more one-on-one and more intimate healing sessions. And I'm a Reiki master for anyone that's like, what's that? It's energy healing. And we're all made of energy. And a lot of times we're just like really blocked up, usually from past experiences in our childhood that don't go away when you just like turn a blind eye to them. They stay there and they manifest. Um, and so I just felt like it was important to have a space, and I was using like a wellness studio, but I wanted it to be more intimate. So I turned um, one of our rooms into a healing room.
I love that.
Yeah,
Also, whenever I see, you because you host events on you
yeah.
don't host them on Instagram, but you post it on Instagram. I'm always like, oh, I want to go.
I'm glad. I'm glad it's resonating.
I love it. I'm like, I want to go. I want to be around all these Black women, these brown women in meditation, in
Yeah.
prayer, in fellowship.
Mm.
It's so powerful. It's so, so
Um,
powerful.
Yes,
Um,
I'm getting goosebumps because it really is such a moving experience when we can sit in union with one another and give space for us to finally be vulnerable. Because that's something that I think, especially as Black women, like, and I'm sure there's so many of us that have talked about this, like this kind of expectation that we have to be hard, and strong. And I think there's so much beauty in being soft.
mm,
That softness is what we really need right now.
I love that you just mentioned that because, again, I've had so many women talk about that softness and
Mm,
how they've been able to become soft
mm.
outside, specifically Americans, outside of America. And I
Yeah,
find that so fascinating
yeah.
that and I want people who are listening to know the softness isn't necessarily, it doesn't mean weakness
No.
or anything like that. Perhaps it has vulnerability, but it's very there's strength in the softness.
Oh,
It's
yeah, definitely.
security. It's feeling
Yeah,
safe in
yes,
space.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and it's transformative. This softness that
Mm,
these Black women are experiencing, they didn't know that they could live life like
oh
that.
gosh,
And then that's
yeah.
their true nature.
That's it. That's exactly. I don't need to
Um,
say anything else. You touched on it like perfectly. So,
oh my, Val, we could talk about this all day. We really could. But I just want to invite everyone who is watching. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate y'all. If you have a comment, concern, I don't know if there's a concern, but if you have a comment or a question,
yeah, maybe not a concern.
I don't know. It's 10:30. I should be like up. But usually I'm not talking to people at 10:30. In my defense, I'm not usually talking to people. Um,
That's all right.
Please put it in the comment section if you have questions about living in Western Australia,
Mm.
about wellness. I mean, we're having this fascinating conversation. If you want to join in, you can go ahead and do so. Ask us any kind of question. But I'll wait for you guys to do that. But I'm going to ask, I'm going to get into my favorite part of every segment that I do, which is the definition of wellness, because I think it's so important. And so I'm going to read what Valerie has said is her definition of wellness, and then we're going to discuss. And if you guys have any thoughts on that, I want you guys to let me know what resonates or anything like that. Okay. So Valerie says, let me pull it up. Boop, boop. Valerie says her experience with wellness is being in harmony and balance with all that is in one's life. Living abroad has given her a deeper appreciation for the simplicity of life beyond our dreams and desires. She's become more in tune with the miracles that arise around her, like the sun giving us just enough warmth to keep us alive. That's, I mean, amen, and not frying us, right? she believes
Seriously.
that she believes that when our lives are continuously focused on just surviving the 9 to 5 grind, we become disconnected from the beauty of life itself.
Mm.
Yes. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Oh my goodness. I think you hit it right on the head there.
Yeah.
Um, oh my gosh. Okay, I have so much to say about it, but I want you,
Yeah.
what made you, what experiences inspired you to come to that definition?
Hmm. I think my experiences of being incredibly isolated and alone,
Hmm.
and experiencing pain
Hmm.
without the numbing mechanisms that I always had in my life when I was in America. I could run to my mother, I could, run to my friends, I could escape in some shape or form. But when I arrived in Western Australia, I had a really bad injury, and so I was in a cast for 3 months, and everyone had pretty much abandoned me at that point. And it was when I could finally sit still and be with myself that I could actually see light for the first time.
Hmm.
Something that I was never still enough to really see the same thing through different eyes. And that was like the beginning of like this realization of like seeing like just the immense beauty and love that was already around my life. Something, like I feel like a lot of us are like chasing something.
Yeah.
We're chasing some sense of fulfillment or liberation. But if we can slow down enough, we can see that it's already here. And that's wellness to me.
Oh my goodness. Valerie, so for those of you who have listened to her episode, again, what are you doing with your life? Listen to her episode. I'll give you a little bit of context here. So Valerie was a corporate finance professional. She
Mhm.
had the opportunity to move to Australia to play professional basketball. And she was just like the MVP, y'all. Like she did it. I remember recording being like, what? I remember being like, you did not say any of this stuff when we first chatted, but it was fine. It was great. It was a great recording for me. I was like, this is fantastic. She really was doing the damn thing, but she had a career-ending injury, and how that went down, I think, was traumatic. I mean, it was
Mm,
traumatic for me to hear, in
yeah,
the way that you were kind of discarded, and in the way that people treated you.
yeah,
Um, I mean, I wanted to fight those people that wouldn't that made you crawl up those stairs. I was not happy about that. But what
yeah.
I learned, and what I hope you guys, if you haven't heard her episode, will get from that is the sincerity and the grace and the peace and the
Mm,
forgiveness that Valerie has come to. Because I actually often think about that, part of her episode, because at first I was like, I'm fighting everybody. I'm gonna fight everybody for Valerie. That's just what's gonna happen. But if you hear, because I asked her a question, I forget what it was, and a follow up, and you're really sincere in your forgiveness and
mm,
why that was that is how life had to play out for you to get to the next level, for you to evolve.
Yeah.
And it really made me start thinking about how I even approach, slights or just outright disrespect. So you're just like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And for you to find that much beauty and light in a dark place, far away from home, is
Yeah.
is incredible. It is so, so deeply moving and incredible. Um, it's so inspiring. You should write a book for sure.
Someone
Um,
else told me this. That's funny.
you
Maybe I
should.
will. I don't
This is your
know.
next. This is your little confirmation. This is your universal nudge. Um, because how you decided to pivot and to keep on going. Um, into building career, into getting permanent residency, all these
Yeah.
things. Even one of the things that occurred during that time, I mean, less than that have sent people home, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I
I've
just
seen it too. I saw
really,
it with another athlete, but I think it's just how it depends on how you look at your experiences. It really, I'm not saying that the experience isn't valid and that it's not heart wrenching or heartbreaking, but I'm saying that if you can look at it through this space of love, then you can actually allow the suffering to be transformed, because you can't, there's only one way to go through pain and suffering, and that's through it. You can't go around it or run away from it. And it wasn't something that I had read in a book. It was literally just letting go, deciding to let go, and all of this beauty just began to arise. Mm.
that is. I still am like, I have to get to that point. I need more
Yeah.
meditation, and being less triggered. This is actually an interesting segue because this segues into something that we talked about on your episode, and that is when you let go and you stopped looking for love, you found your husband. So let's
Yeah.
talk about it because everybody dating abroad is like the number one question I get on all platforms, no matter where I am. It's always very fascinating. But let's get into it. How, for people who haven't listened to your episode, how is dating abroad? And also, how is having an intercultural marriage in Australia?
Yeah. Well, first, I'm married to a white Australian man with a very different lived experience to my own. Um, yeah, I think it's interesting. Like when we talk about dating, um, it's so hard for me to respond because it's challenging no matter where you are. You know what I mean? Like because you're trying to find someone who is in divine alignment with who you are.
Yeah.
That's so special. You're not going to just meet that all of a sudden, you never. And so I think for me, and what I shared in the YouTube video was like, I was so desperate to just like be with someone. I was sick of dating. I wanted to finally have like a partner, someone that I could share life with. It's a common desire that we all have as humans. But the more that I was fighting for it and searching for it, the more I was getting into my own way. And I remember that point where I was like, I had gone on like, it was, these dates were not, they were so meaningless. I wanted to find someone who had like something, some fire in them. And I was just like, you know what? I'm done. I think what I actually need is to be content with where I'm at now. I need to be content with being alone. And so I deleted my app. And I didn't think I was going to upload the app again, but then I got to this point where I was like, you know what? I'm really happy. Like I'm good here. So, but I'm kind of still curious, so I'll go on it. But if I don't meet anyone, I'm okay with that. And if I meet someone, cool. And I think that indifference and that detachment was what created space for, my husband to come into my life. And he was literally the first person I matched with. which is like crazy. Yeah. And it was on Tinder for anyone wondering, which I hear these days is quite different to, to what it was like in like 2014. Um, but yeah, that was the start of our relationship in terms of like the intercultural marriage of, because there's so many different variables there. You have the American and Australian, but you also have like ethnic, like race wise, him being white and me being black. And then me having this like really huge African influence in my life as well with Nigerian parents. Um, but I thought about this a bit more like before I had this conversation with you, and I'm like, but beyond all of that, yes, we could probably talk about that, and I'm sure people could go on YouTube and like find so many, hey, interracial couple conversations. But me, I like to have a bit more meaningful. I'm not saying that's not meaningful, but for me, I'm like, no, that's just not where I'm at. Beyond all of those things, our union is about two like spiritual beings coming together and sharing this like collective reality with one another. And so for me, like interacting with my husband and deeply connecting with him meant that like my perspective on life began to expand. Mm-hmm. And I began to have this deeper connection to things that I never thought about because all I knew was being a Black, like African American woman. I didn't know about like nature. I didn't know about connecting to the soil. Of course, innately I know that, but the numb me, in the reality that I was living in, I didn't know about these things. And it was through my interaction with my husband and this connection with him that I began to fall deeper in love with life. So my suggestion to anyone is like really just spend time with people who are vastly different from you, because it will always help you grow. It will always help you grow.
I love that, because what I tell people is like, not really having to do with dating, because as you said, it's like dating is like, it is what it is, wherever you are. Yeah. But I always tell people, living abroad could be a pathway to wellness, but it has to be an intentional pathway. And it's actually becomes a pathway to wellness. It becomes a way for you to cultivate a life well lived when you lean into the dissonance that you experience, the contrast that you experience.
Yeah.
You don't just shut it down and be like, that's wrong. That's weird. And I tell people, and I always give the example about breakfast, because I think it's like small, but I think it actually applies because a lot of people get really cranky about breakfast. Like you move somewhere and like your cereal is not available, and this is like here in Spain, they don't really do like breakfast like that, really. Like they don't really do it like that. But so like if you move somewhere and they don't do breakfast the way you do, are you angry all the time? Which then kind of like compounds and it kind of taints everything that you look at. Like everything is like irritable, everything irritates you, and you're like, or you can take it as the opportunity for choice. The dissonance is an opportunity for you to sit and say, there's another way to do this. The way that I know is literally has been programmed by my lived experience in the United States, which is not actually universal. Like not everybody has the same one. But if I sit here and I say, oh, there's another choice, that makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm noticing that, but is it right or wrong? Is it danger and safety? Okay, usually it's not. Right. Perhaps I'll try this choice. Maybe I'll like it, maybe I won't, but then your worldview expands, right? Yeah. It's not so rigid. It's not so this is what it is. And I think that's the beauty of living abroad and maybe dating interculturally. You get to see different aspects, but it's not the moving to a place. It is the active participation, it's the being in that uncomfortable space, asking yourself those questions. Why do I feel uncomfortable? Why do I think I'm right? Am I actually right? Like, am I? Or it's all the people I know think I'm right too. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, so true.
I think it's a beautiful, beautiful opportunity, but too often people think it's just literally the transportation of your body to a different place that changes your life.
Yeah,
It's
it's not that. No,
yeah.
it's not. Yeah, you're completely right. It's about being fluid and flowing and questioning everything that you know and you believe. It's getting dark in this room, but if it gets any darker, I might like try to get my husband to turn this light on.
Well, we have like 7 more minutes, so we'll wrap it up.
Okay,
We'll
okay, yeah. Yeah,
I
was
do
it?
want to ask you because I know that you lived in Indonesia and you love Bali. So
Yeah,
this is part of the
yeah,
expat chit chat. Yeah, expat chit chat.
yeah.
What are your, or have you heard about what happens with the Black American women in Bali? And what are
Mhm.
your thoughts? Because you lived on the
Yeah,
island and you have
yeah.
business there. So
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Yes, I did hear about that through like a Bali like Facebook group with a lot of like locals in the group as well. Um, and it was really disturbing. I felt disheartened that people are so quick to attack, you
hmm,
know. And I'm like, my first response is, well, a lot of those people who were attacking them were not, I don't think they were from Bali. They
hmm,
seemed to be from like Jakarta and other areas. And it was like, why are they so concerned about these women's lives in Bali? Um, and why is like hate like the first response to like people living their life? Um, but in terms of like my experience in Bali, it's always been like really beautiful. I've never experienced, to be honest, with the locals in Bali, Balinese people, I should say, they're like incredibly kind and welcoming. They're always smiling and they're inviting you in. I had a neighbor who lived across the road from me, literally like 2 steps away. The roads are really narrow in Bali. And she would always check in on me every day and she'd be like, and she couldn't speak English very well, but she would muster up like enough words to ask, like, where are you going? Like, how are you? You know, she was like learning English words from her young daughter so she could speak to me. And I just thought, wow, like that's why I love it here because of just this compassion that they have for everyone, regardless of race. And I think those girls talk like I literally, because I was like, what's happening? So I went to their YouTube page and it's like they're having like the time of their life. So I don't know if like the people who were attacking them were like from Bali or not. I have a feeling like they weren't. I also know that, you know, usually people behave based on their own like issues, not like the actual like circumstances that we're all talking about. Like, so I think like the tension of being locked up and dealing with COVID has led to people like sort of projecting that onto others. Um,
hmm,
so yeah, I think they were talking about like visas.
yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, they were still buying food. They were paying rent. The Balinese like economy was probably doing quite well because they were there. You know, like it's not always just like people are so focused on this one thing. It's like, but they were still contributing to society. So that's just my 2 cents.
So and tell me, is there like a thriving like Black community in Bali?
Yeah, like when I moved there, it was slowly sort of emerging. But when I left, I noticed that there was with the Black travel movement it started to go into Bali as well at that point. And so now there's like, you know, like this actual thriving Black community. So I'm just like, let Lord, please let this COVID end soon so I could go back to Bali.
I know, right?
It's
I love
amazing.
Bali. I love
Yeah,
Bali. Like
yeah.
I'm trying to get over there, but I'm like, I gotta stay for like a month because it's far for me. So I'm like, I gotta stay for a month.
Yeah, that's like, you know, we're pretty lucky here because it's about like a 3 hour flight. So, but yeah, I'm so happy to see like Black people going and finding some like a deep sense of peace and joy in Bali. It really is a beautiful place. The energy is amazing there.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, Valerie, we are at the end of our time. Thank you so much for chatting with me. Tell everyone where they can find you, any updates or anything that you want to share with them.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for inviting me to reconnect with you. It's always a pleasure, and I love just like, you know, chatting with you. So it's really beautiful. People can find me at Brown Bell Abroad. Bell is Belle. for those who aren't sure. I don't know why. I just felt like I should say that because you just never know. And all of my other channels are linked in my bio there. So yeah, if you're planning on coming to Western Australia, definitely flick me a message, come connect, because I do things outside of like my businesses. Like I connect particularly like Black women together. So yeah.
That is amazing. Thank you so much, Valerie. Thank you all who have stopped by and watched. I appreciate you. Make sure that you are plugged into the Flourish in the Foreign community. You can sign up for the newsletter on the website, www.flourishintheforeign.com. Also, be sure you're listening and subscribe to the podcast, of course, and like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if you're watching this on replay, definitely like drop me some comments. Let me know what you're thinking, how you're feeling. This is a dialogue. And remember, with Flourishing the Foreign, it's not about getting abroad. It's really about thriving abroad. So move abroad and allow living abroad to be a pathway to wellness and cultivate your life, your best life abroad. All right. See you later. Bye.
Bye.